Welcome to this week's Thrive podcast. And today we've got part 2 of clarity, unity, and accountability. So last week we spoke about what clarity, unity, and accountability actually are. They're absolutely foundational for who we are as teams and our organizations. And maybe more importantly, it's exactly the ingredients we need to be able to achieve the desired results of our organization. Last week we said that nobody puts a team together to still keep on doing most of the work, solving every problem, putting out every fire on their own. No, teams work together to achieve amazing results. And here's another thought. Nobody joins a team to lose. Nobody joins a team to have to carry all the responsibility on their own and work really hard every day, every week, and still not achieve amazing results. No, teams are put together to win. And we want you guys to win as a team. And we're going to talk today about, again, part 2 of clarity, unity, and accountability. But before we do, quick recap on what clarity, unity, and accountability actually are. So last week we said that clarity is unmistakable expectations. It's where teams understand where they fit. They're not only on the team, but they're in the right position, doing the right things the right way at the right time. And nobody's throwing each other hospital passes. Everybody's carrying their weight. Everybody understands exactly what it is they're called to do. And that's how teams win. So when we think about clarity, we're thinking about clarity of mission, clarity of vision, clarity of the core values of the organization, process and system. It's a massive thing. There's a quote that I love, and it says that if you don't have a system and a process, you don't know what you're doing. And the reason is because if we've got stored information in our head, one of our old employees used to call it a hit by the bus policy. So what happens if you're not there tomorrow? What happens if you're away for a week or 2 or 3 weeks? If you've got all this stored information about how you do your role and nobody else knows, that's not teamwork. So clarity is super important, and it's unmistakable expectations. It's where you know your role, but it's more than just that. It's like that the team knows the role, that there's a process, there's a system, there's a reason that we do the things that we do. We know why we do what we do, mission. We know where we're going, vision, and we know how to get there, core values. And then beyond that, we're looking for system, process, and all the things that enable us to be a tight, unified team. If you remember last week, there was a quote from George Bernard Shaw, and he said, the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it's taken place. So one of the things that we need to get really clear on as teams is how we communicate with each other, because communication's actually one of the hardest things to do. But when you get it right as a team, it's one of those miracle ingredients that enables you, no matter the stress and the strain and all the things that are going on around you as a team, you can turn up every day and you can turn up achieving the desired results because you're clear around what needs to be done and how you communicate as a team. Now, the second thing that we talked about last week was unity. Now, what's unity? Unity is unbroken connection. Here's what it's not. It's not everybody agreeing all the time. It's not everybody conforming to different ways and personality types. No, it's just a connection and a commitment to each other. We said that unity is putting your hand out. It's commitment to each other regardless of what it is that you're going through. You're going to disagree on certain things, but are you committed to each other regardless? Of course, we need to be unified. Unity means that we're walking in the same direction, that we have the same goals. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to do it the same way every time, but we communicate. We speak to each other. We're committed to one another. As a team, if you don't have unity, you won't move forward. Sooner or later, you guys will hit a wall. Remember that old saying, and it says, united we stand, divided we fall. Unity is unbroken connection. It's not necessarily agreeing, but it's being committed to each other. It's putting your hand out. And then that brings us to the third point, which is accountability. And accountability, as we said last week, seems like a swear word, but it's absolutely not. Accountability is just accepted responsibility. If you want to win a grand final, if you're a rugby league football team or the World Cup at the moment that's going on with soccer. If you want to win the World Cup, you are going to need to be clear, unified, and accountable to what it is and what part you play in the team. Look, accountability is just accepted responsibility. This is the position I hold. These are responsibilities I have. This is the behavior I commit to. And when I go south and make mistakes, and I will, if unity is putting your hand out, commitment to each other, accountability is putting your hand up, it's commitment to the standards, pre-agreed standards. The best type of accountability is pre-agreed. And so it's just a commitment to the standards. And you won't win the grand final without that. We need clarity, we need unity, and we need accountability. So today we're going to talk about Winston Churchill and the role that he played in a victorious Britain during World War II. It's an absolutely amazing story. I won't go on too much about it. I'm just going to dig right in. But essentially, this is what he was able to do. Now, he was one of many, of course. There was lots of other leaders during this time, but Winston Churchill was a voice, and this is what he did. He brought clarity, he brought unity, and he brought accountability. Let's dig in. All right. So during World War II, Winston Churchill had one goal, and it was to unify a broken Britain. On the 13th of May, 1940, Churchill made his first speech as Prime Minister. Almost all of Western Europe at that time had fallen to Nazi Germany, and Britain stood alone. There was no guarantee that Britain was going to win the war. Britain's survival actually depended upon communication, clarity of communication, clarity around unity, and clarity around shared responsibility. Exactly the things we've been talking about. And survival was going to take an entire nation playing its part. So in his first speech as Prime Minister, this is what he said. I would say to the House, as I said to those who have joined this government, I have nothing to offer but blood, toils, tears, and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind. We have before us many, many, many long months of struggle and suffering. And you might ask, what is our policy? I will say it's to wage war by the sea, by the land, and by the air, and with all our might and with all our strength that God has given us. To wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalogue of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? And I can answer in one word: victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and how hard the road may be. For without victory, there is no survival. Here's what we need to know about Winston Churchill. Nobody wanted him as their leader. The king actually didn't like him, and most of Parliament didn't get along with him. And yet he was the very man for the job. And the reason is because he actually believed that victory was possible. There are a lot in Parliament that wanted to roll over to Hitler at the time. But he said, no, this is important. We need to stand up. We need to fight, and we will be victorious. He got clear on the vision that was required for Britain to be able to win during this absolutely monumentous time in history. And this is what it is for us working in teams. Often we rely on our leaders, and that's amazing, and leaders are there for that. But in times of trouble, we need to band together as teams. And we need to understand what's possible. This is the problem with teams that struggle, and it's like 7 steps forward and 15 back. It's because often they don't have a clear vision. They don't know what's possible. But I'm here to tell you that anything's possible if you can get clear around your communication, if you can unify as a team, and you can get accountable around the responsibilities that you carry in your organisation. And Winston Churchill understood this. And he said, this is what we can achieve. But you notice he didn't sugarcoat it. He said it was going to be hard. It was going to be a tough road. But in the end, if we fight, we can win. And so can you guys. Whatever it is you're up against, and we're all up against something, you can win. You as a team can achieve your goals. But you have to be clear, you have to be unified, and you have to be accountable to one another. By May 19, 1940, the Allied troops were already cut off and they were retreating to the beaches of Dunkirk. Those of you who know, the beaches of Dunkirk was a place where they were isolated and the ships couldn't get in. It was too shallow to pick them up, but the Nazis were marching them forward to what was essentially a dead end. And so with all this going on, Churchill made his first radio broadcast to the nation. He said this: "At this time, I feel entitled to claim the aid of all. And I say, come then, let us go forward together with our united strength. The whole fury and might of the enemy must very soon be turned against us. Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. Let us therefore brace ourselves for our duties, and so bear ourselves, that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will say, this was their finest hour. Be men and women of valour and be strong. That is absolutely remarkable. And this is where, if you know your history, this is where they called upon general everyday civilians to jump in their pleasure craft. We're talking boats and yachts and fishing vessels, and go and rescue soldiers off the beaches of Dunkirk. As much as the army may have commandeered some of the vehicles, a lot of these vessels were actually driven by everyday people just like you and I. They were taking their boats into a war zone. Can you actually believe it? It's an amazing story of unity and responsibility. So this operation was called Operation Dynamo. It was the Dunkirk evacuation that was put in place. Many ships were sunk or damaged. Big ships couldn't get in close enough to pick them up on the beaches. 700 to 800 civilian vessels took part in this rescue, including fishing boats, yachts, lifeboats, riverboats. Many boats were sailed by civilian volunteers, often under fire. Early estimates expected that 45,000 troops needed to be picked up. In reality, it was more like 400,000. It's absolutely unbelievable. And so on the 4th of June, 1940, on the final day of evacuation, when the outcome was still fragile and Britain was still under the immediate threat of invasion, Churchill spoke before relief could turn to complacency. He needed to shore up his people and get their mindset right. He needed to rally them, get clear on what was expected. And so here's what he said. He said, we shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France, we shall fight on the seas and the oceans, and we shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be, and we shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, and we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, and we shall fight in the hills, and we will never surrender. Again, Winston Churchill's just setting the expectation around what it is that we need to get clear on, where it is that we need to unify, and where it is that we need to be accountable for outcomes. And the outcome of this monumentous event was 338,000 Allied soldiers were evacuated, and without Dunkirk, Britain would probably not survive the war. It became an absolute monument of national unity and accountability. Guys, when we relate this back to our teams and what it is that we are responsible for, this tells us that anything's possible if we unify together. It's not a matter of if we're coming up against struggles in our teams. It's just a matter of where. But are we being clear around what it is that we need to achieve and how we're going to achieve it? Are we being unified no matter what it is that's going on? Are we committed to each other? And are we being accountable? Are we stepping up to the responsibilities of our role? And if you can do these things, you will overcome monumentous challenges, just like we see here in wartime Britain. And as much as Operation Dynamo was a massive victory for Britain, there was worse to come. Between September 1940 and May 1941, to break civilian morale, Hitler decided that it was time to turn all his energies on the cities of Britain rather than the airfields, and he started bombing British cities. So this marked the beginning of the Blitz. British cities, listen to these stats, sustained 8 months of bombing. London was bombed for 57 consecutive nights. Over 40,000 civilians were killed. Around 1 million homes were destroyed or damaged. And listen to this, over 1 million or 71,000 tons of bombs were dropped on Britain. But here's the amazing thing. By May 1941, Hitler turned his attention to the Soviet Union, and Britain was still unified as a country. Britain had undergone catastrophic damages, catastrophic fear, catastrophic failure, catastrophic war, and yet they unified together, and Britain went on to win the war. You know, it's amazing because we listen to these old stories and sometimes we can just glaze over because it's already happened and we can think, or okay, it was inevitable. It wasn't inevitable. It wasn't inevitable that Britain would be unified and accountable during a season of war where 1 million bombs were dropped on cities. Guys, here's why we're talking about this story today. I'm convinced that no matter what you've been up against, the best is yet to come. I'm convinced that you as a team and you as an individual and you as a leader can achieve above and beyond what you've ever hoped, dreamed or imagined. But I don't think it can happen unless you're clear, unified and accountable. When you get those three elements right, you will achieve amazing things. When you get clear on mission, vision and core values, roles and responsibilities, system and process, when you know who you are and how you're going to go about your day-to-day, you will start to achieve amazing results. When you're unified, when you walk in the same direction, when you're committed to each other, and when you're responsible, when you're accountable for the performance and the responsibilities of your role. Every team member needs to put their hand up when they made a mistake or veered left or right and get back on track and walk in the same direction. But this is the best type of accountability, is pre-agreed. No one gets surprised. Everyone knows what they've got to do and they just turn up every day and do it. If you do that, I reckon that even when the bombs drop, you guys will achieve amazing results. How do we know? Because it's actually our story. 5 years into owning our business, I was the leader. I owned the business and I wanted to quit. And it's because I wasn't clear. I didn't necessarily had built unity by then, and I wasn't accountable for the things that only I could do. Instead, I was just wishful thinking. I was just hoping that everything would come good. I was waiting for life to roll out the red carpet. Here's the thing, guys. Life doesn't roll out the red carpet. There is no perfect boss and there is no perfect place to work. But when teams band together and they get clear, unified and accountable, that's when you start to achieve amazing results. If we're waiting for life to roll out the red carpet, we become victims of circumstance. Rather, we want to start to take responsibility and accountability for the actions and the outcomes of our role, and that takes a team. This is an amazing story that I hope has rallied some inspiration for you guys as a team. But it's only a story. What's your story? This is the outcome for Britain. I think I've shown you why. We had a leader who was able to set a vision for what's possible, but he needed a country to get behind him. So where are you guys up to as a team? We shouldn't be relying on one person to carry it all. Teams work best when they rally together. And this is what I believe. Again, just to finish, just to wrap on what's been part 2 of clarity, unity, and accountability. Here's my thoughts. Here's my takeaway. You guys can achieve above and beyond what you've ever hoped, dreamed, or imagined when you get clear on what winning looks like, what your mission is, why you exist, what your vision is, where you're going, and what your core values are, how you're going to get there. When you get crystal clear on roles and responsibilities, system and process, when you know why you're doing what you're doing and how you're going to do it, then you unify and head in the same direction and be responsible and accountable for the performance of your role. Every single one of you guys step up daily. You guys are going to achieve amazing results as a team. And for those who just have to acknowledge they're in a tough season, that, things have been like 7 steps forward and 15 back. That happens. It happens to us all. You don't have to be a perfect team. You just have to be clear, united, and accountable. See you guys. Cheers.